Greetings everyone! Welcome to the Sonic Sabrina crossover. Yes folks, despite this video being released on April 1st, this is indeed real. The only reason these two would cross over is because both are owned by Archie Comics. For those not familiar with Sabrina, here's a brief summary. Sabrina the Teenage Witch was created by George Gladier and Dan DeCarlo in 1962, and first appeared in Archie's Madhouse number 22. Since then, she had multiple comic series, a few television series including the live-action one starring Melissa Joan Hart, and appeared in a number of Archie books including, we'll get to this story in a moment. The basic premise is that Sabrina Spellman, yes, that's her last name, is technically a half-witch. But get this, the parent that's the witch is her father. Now, I'm not that well versed in labels, but wouldn't that technically make him a wizard or a warlock? Anyway, she lives with her aunts Hilda and Zelda Spellman, witches of course, and they have a pet named Salem Saberhagen, a male witch that was turned into a cat as punishment for trying to take over the world. Many stories involve Sabrina learning about her magical heritage and secretly casting spells to help others. This is because mortals cannot know about the magical realm. There are some other supporting cast members, but I would like to draw attention to this lady, Enchantra, Queen of the Witches and the antagonist of this story. The story, Some Enchantra Evening, is actually split among two books. It starts in Sabrina the Teenage Witch number 28 and concludes in Sonic Super Special number 10. There are other stories in both issues, but we're just going to focus on the crossover today. So, let's get started. We begin with Enchantra yelling at Della about setting up this newfangled computer thingy. The technician helping them says that the system is ready. Della explains that the tech, Larry, got everything up and running, including formatting files, which include information about witches. And because mortals like Larry aren't supposed to know about witches, Enchantra turns him into a slug. Enchantra exposits that the equipment is to spy and get revenge on Sabrina for something she did to her recently. Enchantra learns that Hilda and Zelda are taking a trip to Florida, leaving Sabrina and Salem home alone. Considering this the perfect time to strike, Enchantra magically connects to what I'm guessing is the information superhighway via computer? Because of this connection, she gains access to a number of dimensions and alternate universes. Enchantra soon takes interest in a certain world, Mobius to be exact, and on one speedy blue hedgehog. On Mobius, Sonic and Sally are discussing the concept of business before pleasure. I'll give you one guess who's for what. Anyway, Sonic walks off needing a break from Sally, and straight into Enchantra's clutches. She brainwashes the hedgehog and teleports him away. Sally arrives at the teleportation spot. Nicole analyzes the area and concludes that the portal is still open. Sally orders her to pinpoint and follow. Enchantra and Sonic arrive back in Enchantra's otherworldly lair, only to leave for Sabrina's house a moment later. Upon arrival, Enchantra orders Sonic to waste Westbridge and let nothing stand in his way before she leaves. The noises Sonic makes wakes up Salem. Upon seeing Sonic, he acts all fanboyish, or would it be fan-cattish, claiming that he has all the comics. Heh. Brainwashed Sonic, however, starts attacking Salem. The cat's able to hold his own with some spells. Remember, he was a male witch, so I'm assuming he still has some power, just nowhere near threat level. The noise wakes up Sabrina, and Salem quickly explains the situation. Then Sonic busts through the wall and starts heading towards Sabrina. Sonic dodges Sabrina's power pulses, but Salem's cat litter trips up the hedgehog and he slams into a wall. Sabrina goes for one of her aunt's emergency spell books, only to get door slammed thanks to Sally's arrival. Sally apologizes and the ladies introduce each other. Salem reminds the two that there's still a brainwashed crazy hedgehog about to attack them, thus ending the Sabrina 28 portion of the story. We begin the Sonic Super Special 10 portion exactly where we left off, except you might notice that Sabrina's wearing a different outfit from the previous part. Now you could say that Sabrina magically changed clothes because, well, witch. Then why would she do this in the middle of an attack? Since the art was done by the exact same team in both parts, I'm going to stamp this as a continuity flub. Sabrina halts Sonic's attack by setting him far, far away. How anticlimactic. After a panel where the ladies play the blame game, Salem steps in to mediate the situation. After comparing notes, they figured out that Enchantra's the culprit. Back in the other world, Enchantra and Della locate Sonic on the top of Mount Everest. Okay. Before sending him back, Enchantra establishes a direct mind link to Sonic so that she can always track him. Back in Sabrina's home, Nicole picks up Sonic's return. He's heading towards Sabrina's high school and Sabrina heads him off. Then Sally and Salem notice something else Nicole's discovered. Sonic's about to trash the school when Sabrina arrives and trips him. Sonic retaliates by making Sabrina dizzy using a figure-8 pattern. Then he starts using his speed to suffocate her. Before passing out, she teleports a tree in Sonic's path. Of course, he rams into it, knocking him unconscious. Back in the other world, Enchantra and Della once again lose contact with Sonic. Sally and Salem arrive to confront Enchantra with their discovery. Nicole explains that Enchantra's portal is still open and that Sally threatens to broadcast its location to her enemies. As Enchantra whines how she doesn't want any of them invading her world, Sonic, free from the brainwashing, runs her over. Sabrina's also here, saying that she explained everything to Sonic and brought him here. Now, if it was the tree that restored him to normal, then how come when he ran into the wall in part 1, he didn't return to normal then? But whatever. Sally stops Sonic from attacking because she's about to reach a deal. Either send Sonic and Sally home and leave them be, or Sally transmits the portal coordinates to her foes. Enchantra still has business with Sabrina, and Sabrina agrees it's just between the two of them. And so Enchantra returns the Sonic characters home 1 second after they left, and with no memory of these experiences. So what's the very thing that made Enchantra so mad as to kidnap someone from another dimension and use him to attack Sabrina's home? Sabrina fictionalized Enchantra's name in a school paper. I am not joking. Sabrina explains that the mortals couldn't comprehend her unequal beauty and power. Enchantra is so flattered that she forgives Sabrina and sends her and Salem back home. Back at Sabrina's house, Salem's upset that he didn't get a chance to have Sonic autograph his comic collection. Back on Mobius, Sonic and Sally resume their business versus pleasure discussion. Only this time, they have the opposite opinions from earlier. And so this crossover ends with Sonic getting back into the business of saving the world, leaving Sally in the dust. I'll be upfront here. I didn't like this crossover. Perhaps Worlds Collide has spoiled me when it comes to crossovers featuring Sonic and another character. But the one featuring Sabrina has its own problems, besides the two I mentioned earlier in the summary. First, the plot. All this was because Sabrina changed Enchantra's name on her school paper. Now, I'm not that well versed in Sabrina lore, but is Enchantra always so veiny? The second problem is the usage of the characters. There's obviously a lot more focus on the Sabrina side of things. It sort of makes sense because it was Enchantra that brought Sonic over and sent him to attack Sabrina and Westbridge. Sabrina was able to hold her own against Sonic, barely, but she did succeed in knocking out Sonic, which eventually snapped him out of the brainwashing. Again, why didn't he snap out of it when he hit the wall in Sabrina's home? As for Salem, I like him the most. Probably because he's a big fan of Sonic, and there is a certain charm to this cat. For Sonic himself, I didn't like how he was brainwashed for most of this story. I'd expect a little more interaction between him and Sabrina, at least on panel. Sally, and by extension Nicole, interacted the most with Sabrina and Salem, and it was the two of them that threatened Enchantra with the portal, which I admit is a bold way to stop a conflict. In reality, it's more of a Sabrina-Sally Acorn crossover. But since Sally is not as popular as Sonic, might as well put him in the story in some capacity. One more thing about this crossover is its placement in Sonic canon. You would think that this takes place before the events of Endgame with Robotnik present here. But with characters like Ixis Nagas present, who debuted after Endgame by the way, it's hard to pinpoint when it takes place. Some would like to forget that this story even exists, and I understand why. The story was written by our favorite goofy comic writer, Mike Gallagher, and you can definitely tell by these certain panels right here. There are actually two artists that worked on this story. For the Sabrina parts, the art was done by Dan DeCarlo. Yep, one of the creators of Sabrina. And I admit, it looks pretty decent. For the Sonic sections, Dave Mannix the artist, and I admit, I'm not a fan of his work. We'll see more of it when I eventually get around to reviewing the early issues. You can definitely see it here with the head. In the end, the Sonic-Sabrina crossover gets a 4. The antagonist's motivation is way too silly, and Sonic got the shaft here. but I did like the Salem bits. In the end, this was a cross-promotional story in order for Sonic fans to take a peek at Sabrina comics and vice versa. If you are curious about this crossover, you can find it here in Sonic Selects number 10. Now, I apologize to any Sabrina fans who might be watching, but this story here does not work for me. If you enjoy it, that's fine. I've got no problems with that. So thank you everyone for joining me in exploring this bizarre part of Sonic comic history. Until my next review, have a good day and be safe.